Buenos dias, my name is Brianna Horta. I'm here today to talk about Ana Castillo's Saturday. I wanted to make some connections to her other poem, A Marriage of Mutes. Some of the themes that Ana Castillo talks about within these two poems are patriarchy, gender roles, expectations of women by men and society in general. I also wanted to talk about division of labor in marriages as well as family relationships. Ana Castillo is a poet, activist, novelist, and scholar, combining creativity with theoretical framework about the distinctive nature of Chicana literature, culture, and tradition, for which she coined the term Chicanismo. Across the globe, people know her to be a political poet, fighting for respect for Chicanas outside and inside the Chicano movement. So I wanted to start today off by reading the poem Saturdays. Because she worked all week away from home, gone from 5 to 5, Saturdays she did the laundry, pulled the wringer machine to the kitchen and hung the clothes out on the line. At night, we took it down and ironed. Mine were his handkerchiefs and boxer shorts. She did his work. Pants, never to be worn on the street, and shirts, pressed the collars and cuffs just so. As he bathed, donned the tailor-made silk suit, bought on her credit, had her adjust the tie. How do I look? Bien, went on ironing. That's why he married her, a Mexican woman, like his mother. Not like they were in Chicago, not like the one he was going out to meet. The second poem I'll be reading is called A Marriage of Mutes by Ana Castillo. In the house that was his house, where the woman who lived there cut the vegetables, hacked the chicken, boiled on the stove, and waited across the table as he ate with eyes that asked, was it all right? Was it enough? The woman who slept with him changed the linen, scrubbed oil from his coveralls, hung laundry on the line, never sought the face of the woman across the yard who hung sheets, coveralls, and underwear. In the house where this man lived, so at peace with himself, the air grew sparse one morning. The hall to the bathroom narrowed as his feet grew angular and head lightened. He startled himself to hear his first caw, beating black wings against walls, knocking down picture frames of the woman's ancestors, the offspring's bronzed shoes, off the buffet. One could only guess what he might have said had his beak contained teeth. The woman who always anticipated his needs opened the window. She would have wanted the crow to sit on the couch to read with her, listen to music, languish in a moment of peace. Before the bird, who was the man she had lived with in such gratitude, flew off. But, of course, it was too much to ask. It had always been too much to ask. Castillo wrote Saturdays in really great detail, talking about the duties that it takes for a family to maintain themselves. A lot of the work was done by the mother, which is, I believe, to be Castillo's mother in this poem. Not only is her mother consumed with a lot of the housework, but it also, Ana Castillo finds herself very much occupied by this housework as well. Different ways to think about how expectations of women by men as well as society in general within families can be challenged is to think about the workload being split. Just because a man goes to work and spends all day at work doesn't mean that he can't come home and make dinner too. Women in this society do occupy jobs. We have our own jobs, and on top of those jobs, we're expected to still come home, please our husband, please our children, make dinner, clean the clothes, clean the house, make sure that the guests are happy when there are guests within the home. Women, are expected to stay in the home. It decreases our chances in going to school. What does that say about the quality of life for Chicanas? We should be challenging that. We shouldn't be complacent with that behavior. We're conditioned to believe that we're the ones in charge and we're the ones responsible for the identity of not only the home, but of the relationship, of the family. And that's a lot of pressure. It should be shared, it should be equal. Because of colonization, we have these particular Western perspectives of what a family unit should be. So, because we have been colonized, we expect women to stay at the house and to take care of the home. Prior to this, I bring this up because prior to Mexican American and even Chicano traditional households, there were indigenous ways of knowing. What Ana Castillo actually argues is saying that these two poems come from a larger work of Ana Castillo's called My Father Was a Toltec. So she actually goes into the indigenismo within the naming process of this book. She describes it by saying that before the Mexica people, there were the Toltec people. So she not only brings in indigenous ways of knowing and indigenous identity, but she also touches on new politics of the Toltecs, which is actually a Chicago gang because of society, because of oppression, because of greed, because of competition that's all rooted in capitalism. There are these feelings of insecurity. So, one way to combat this way of insecurity or even being ignored within society is to create your own forms of protection. They weren't being protected by police, and we still aren't being protected by police. So, what do you do whenever you don't have protection? You create your own forms, you create your own circles so that you can walk the streets, so that you can live in a society and feel safe because that's the society that we live in. The incredibly complex lives of gang members and their families. By Ana Castillo mentioning that her father was in a gang, it places that violence in which was inflicted on the family in the home, because if he's surrounded by violence, then of course he brings that violence home. Understanding that these gang members aren't inherently violent. They've been ignored and rejected by larger mainstream white hegemonic society. They have not created their own groups respective of the women of color within those groups. So you see that fracture within gang organizing and a lot of male centered organizing is that they don't put women at the forefront. You also see it within the Chicano movement that women were often left out, and so Ana Castillo's work very much represents the women in the Chicano movement because there were women there. However, we weren't a part of creating that representation. We weren't a part of creating that image. So that's the problem that comes with Chicanos and Chicano families too, is that oftentimes we weren't part of the creation process. We are a part of the fabric inherently of the United States culture, but we weren't given autonomy over how we want to represent ourselves. And that's where a lot of the issue lies, but that's also where Ana Castillo, her work is so crucial. That's the language in which society expects us to defend our rights, expects us to defend ourselves and our lives.